A new court decision putting one of Trump's most controversial executive orders on hold. An appeals court saying, for now, it will not allow Trump to end birthright citizenship. That's the constitutional right that any person born on U.S. soil is an American. The decision potentially setting up a showdown at the Supreme Court.
John Eastman is here in the House with us. He's joining us. President Trump, I say former personal attorney for President Trump, who was there in 2020. They went after him. They tried to destroy him. But guess what? John Eastman is still standing, and John Eastman isn't going anywhere.
I like to say they picked the wrong guy to pick on.
They picked the wrong guy. They picked the wrong movement to pick on.
Patel there now. We're looking for a future unburdened by what has been.
John, now I got to ask you, and if you guys don't mind, we're going to get a little legalistic. We're going to get a little legalistic here, but that's right. This is CPAC after all, and we love our Constitution. And so, John, this is the question that I have. Where in the Constitution does it say that a district judge can issue an injunction striking down all of DOGE, all of the president's actions, something that the president wants done, that you have to hire people? Where in the Constitution is that? Because I haven't seen it.
I've looked and looked and looked, and I can't find it either. I think the judges are misunderstanding that they're under Article 3 and that the executive branch is under Article 2. And how the president runs his own branch is no business of the federal judiciary.
It's as simple as that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's called the system of checks and balances and the separation of powers. And think of it, right? You know, the president can't come in and tell John Roberts who he should hire as a clerk, or, you know, what cases they should take up, right? That's a clear separation of powers.
The craziest one of these was the injunction telling the incoming Secretary of the Treasury that he could not look at the work that his own employees were doing because they were the ones that were running the agency. It completely turns upside down the impact of any election, and they forget that they work for us. We don't work for them. And certainly the President of the United States doesn't work for these unaccountable and unelected bureaucrats.
John Eastman, let me ask you a question. How many elected members of the federal government are there when it comes to the executive branch?
How many elected people are our guys? Just two. The president and the vice president.
President and the vice president.
Everybody else has their executive authority only a derivative from the people we elected at the top of that branch.
So what does this mean? This means then that take it back to the founders, take it back to the Federalist Papers. If the idea was that the president would hold these powers, which, and I'm going to use the phrase of the founders, media doesn't like when I say this, but Hamilton said it again and again. He would say, we want the president to have king-like powers. King-like, I didn't say kingly, I said king-like. King-like powers. Actually, they likened it to a Polish king at the time, which, because the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had an elected king for all the different provinces, and that's a whole bit of history to go down the rabbit hole if anyone's interested. There's some Polish guys here. You guys remember the Polish kings were elected, but the idea was it was a king and a parliament was what the Polish Commonwealth had, and so they wanted to have someone who was an executive with a Congress. So the question then is, if you're in one of those situations, you need for that person to be duly elected by, and by the way, the president, let's remember this, folks, is not elected by the popular vote. The president is elected by the states. But that's okay because we won the popular vote anyway.
Right. So, there was actually a proposal in the federal convention to have the executive run by a committee, and they decided not to do that because members of committee get to avoid accountability by blaming the other members of committee. They wanted an executive where the buck would stop here, like President Harry Truman famously said, that he would be the one accountable to the American people for any decisions he took, whether good or bad, and we would hold him to account. And he also needed to act with secrecy and dispatch. That's the phrase in the Federalist Papers. Dispatch, that means quickly. How many think that the president has been acting quickly over the last 30 days?
Is the president acting with secrecy and dispatch? Well, I'll say dispatch, probably not secrecy, though, because he is doing everything. And I got to tell you, it is the most radically transparent administration that probably America has ever seen. Because what they're doing with embracing social media, with embracing new media, with bringing influencers in, by bringing people, putting them in the room, it's not about that person. It's about getting the information out to all of you. It's about getting the information directly out to everyone. And if people don't like something, they can say something. But guess what? There are no backroom deals anymore because he's putting you in the room. That's why they're bringing people on these trips. That's why they're inviting folks along.
Every American has the ability to be in that room. Tash has confirmed. Every American has the ability to be in that room, and there are no filters coming out of MSNBC or CNN on what we're allowed to hear. The president and Elon Musk and the president's heads of departments are speaking directly to the American people, and they're welcoming our immediate and direct feedback. That's a revolution in how we communicate to our government, and it really epitomizes the foundational cornerstone principle of our country, consent of the governed. They are letting us know what they're doing, and we are giving them immediate feedback and letting them know whether we consent. And so far, we're consenting to everything he's doing. It's wonderful.
It's as simple as that, folks. 3 branches, not 4. So that city right across the river from us right now, well, up the river technically, across and up the river. It's kind of a, because you have the Anacostia that comes in. That city doesn't believe that, because that city believes it's like I'm going to steal a joke from Rick Grinnell. It's kind of like, he said, what Trump is doing right now, what Trump and Elon are doing right now, is like if you went to L.A. and you became the mayor of L.A. and said, we're not going to do movies anymore, right? And all the people in L.A. would be losing their minds, because government in Washington, D.C. is the industry. This is a one-industry town. So there's never going to be anyone in this town, there's no constituency for ending the power of government, for shutting down any of these programs. But you know what? If you send people who decide that they don't want to go to Washington, D.C. to play the game, they don't want to go to Washington, D.C. to cash out, if you send, I don't know, a couple of billionaires to Washington, D.C., they go in like a wrecking ball, ladies and gentlemen, an absolute wrecking ball. And I got to say, are they keeping their promises?
Well, and President Trump also learned a lot from his first term in office. He learned all the tricks that the entrenched bureaucracy plays. Oh, that's a good idea, Mr. President. Let us set up a committee to study it. And then 4 years later, nothing had been done. So he came in this time saying, we're not playing that game anymore. And what he learned in that first 4 years, and what he learned over the 4 years in the middle, I compare it to Churchill's wilderness years, where Churchill was in leadership and then he spent a lot of years out of leadership, and he prepared for the next time he would come in. President Trump has done that, and what we're seeing is an awesome shock and awe attempt to put this country back on the right track toward prosperity and freedom.
I love it. So John, because we've got about 2 minutes left, but I would be remiss if I didn't have the great John Eastman here and I didn't ask him a question about birthright citizenship. Folks, what do you think? Do you think that our founders intended for illegal aliens to be able to violate our border and then produce American citizens just because their children were born here?
So, Hawaii Senator Hirono published on her Twitter page.
Crazy Maisie, we call her. Crazy Maisie.
Yeah, she published on her Twitter page, the Constitution is clear. All persons born here, ... are citizens. And she wrote out the key phrase, and subject to the jurisdiction. And that did not mean just subject to the laws. It meant subject to the complete jurisdiction. You're part of our political community. We've given you our consent to be here and join us in this wonderful enterprise. And without that, you're not automatic citizens. And by the way, the other part of this, citizenship born on the soil, was that if you were born on the king's soil, you've owed forever allegiance to the king, and you could never renounce it. Well, go back and look at the last paragraph of our Declaration of Independence. It says that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, and we hereby renounce all allegiance to the crown. They rejected birthright citizenship at the very moment of our founding.